When you hear his words, forget on the gun issue. Listen, I and other people find homophobic, beyond insulting, but he's castigating, putting marks on people like you and your family. I mean, I'm just saying, as dad myself, the guy says something. It would take a lot for me not to want to grab him by the collar. Do you ever get tempted when these guys proudly say this in front of a camera? Ever separate yourself? Ever make it difficult to separate yourself from lawmaker to partner and dad?
Look, there are people who are going to hate, and there are people who are going to criticize. The problem is not.
But you share an office with this guy. It's a little different than some idiot on a radio.
My focus is not on my family. It's on we're going to be fine. I take a lot of criticism. That comes with the territory. A lot of it's unfair. You know that going in. That's fine. That's my job in some way. I'm more worried about what attitudes like that do to families in the Hudson Valley. I'm worried that attitudes like that are going to result in 2,000 families at West Point getting furlough notices tomorrow. I'm worried that attitudes like that are going to make it harder to get clean drinking water in Hopewell Junction because they're starving the Superfund funds that would pay for it. I'm worried that attitudes like that won't get us the resources we need to get the Tappan Zee Bridge built or to get Taylor Biomass going out in Montgomery, which would be 300 jobs tomorrow. Those hurt real families that are just trying to, pay for school, play by the rules, save some money for retirement. And that's where the rubber meets the road for me. I can take the hits, I'll be fine. It's that these extreme attitudes are stopping us from working together and making progress the way we have in other periods of American history where we grew the middle class, balanced the budget the right way, and led the world. And we can do that again, but we've got to start talking to each other again and stop this kind of childish fighting.
I want to come back to this question in 1 second, but one last question on guns. Almost 20 years ago, with the help of Ronald Reagan, we passed an assault weapons bill. The idea, if you said to somebody 20 years ago, we can pass an assault weapons bill now, but let's fast forward 20 years. The velocity of support for same-sex marriage, unbelievable. Immigration reform, I really think, you're closer than me, it's probably going to happen. But somehow, some way, we've gone so far backwards. After 20 children were killed in a classroom, it doesn't add up. It's like socially people have moved forward here and are more accepting. And also we're going to make some practical moves, maybe with political calculations on immigration. But when it comes to guns, it's like we've gone back 100 years. It's amazing when you look at some of the metrics going on, what can and can't get through in Washington today.
I actually would question your premise on this, and I have a lot of respect for you, so let me just tell you what I mean. What I mean is, I think that you can't equate gun ownership with gun violence. Gun owners are not the problem. The Second Amendment is not the problem. Hunters and sportsmen and collectors, they aren't engaging in these mass shootings. They aren't killing people with these weapons. The problem is that we have criminals who have access to guns. In some cases, people who are very seriously mentally ill, who should never have had guns in the first place. And there are real steps that have nothing to do with the Second Amendment, that have nothing to do with treating hunters and sportsmen like criminals, that will save lives. And we can do it in a bipartisan way. So
I agree with everything you said, but hasn't that been
news.
articulated? The president took to a national stage. He explained nobody's going to do a gun grab. He told them exactly what he's trying to do, and I think they've articulated it pretty well. I think people know what the choices are right now. I don't think for once this is a marketing problem. I just think this is an action problem. We agree 100% on what Washington is trying to do, and I think the public supports it in every single poll. Right. It's frankly your colleagues that are holding it up, and that's the frustration here, because the public's already spoken. They know what they want. They've said what they want. They just can't get it from D.C.
Well, we have too many extremists still in the House of Representatives. It's true. And it's one of the reasons it took us 500 days to get the Violence Against Women Act reauthorized, but we got it done. And we're making some progress on other issues like the ones you mentioned. I think we can get this done too. There's hope here. We've got to keep fighting and keep pressing. And we have to come together and say that there's no room in our politics for extremism. When it comes to protecting kids in their classroom, we got to sit down, take a deep breath, and listen to one another and do what works, do what will save lives. And for me, universal background checks, a federal gun trafficking law, better screening of dangerously mentally ill people. Those are concrete steps that will save lives, and we don't need to trample on the Second Amendment to do it.
I noticed you didn't mention an assault weapons ban. Is that a political impossibility?
Well, it's not being considered by the Congress right now. So in that sense, it's not before us. But I think that when I'm very interested in having a conversation about what would work in that context. The Supreme Court has told us that people have a right to own guns in their home. You know, what type of weapons, where you can carry it, what types of magazine clips you can acquire. Those things get into a gray area where we should have an honest conversation about what will save lives. But it is not where I would start. Where I would start is on what would work and work best. And what's going to work best are the things I mentioned.
Okay. Last question on sequestration. You already touched on it, but I think this is perception out there that says from the general public, hey, you know what, it wasn't that bad. It was a lot of much ado about nothing. But just using West Point as a specific example, tell people why there was a consequence, is a consequence, and it's affecting real people in real ways.
Right. Well, Richard, thank you for bringing up West Point. I mean, I think there's so much politics involved here, and everybody's so invested in proving their side or the other was right, that we can't just look at the facts. You know, I don't care about being on the red team or blue team. I care about how is sequestration going to affect the Hudson Valley. And in West Point, at West Point, there are 2,000 families that are going to be furloughed. They're getting notices tomorrow on April 5th. There are another 400 families at Stewart Air National Guard Base, same thing. There are thousands of jobs affected in our region. And so I hear people out there saying, oh, it's no big deal. Well, tell that to the families at West Point. Now, we sent a letter this week to the President and to the Secretary of Defense saying the Congress has passed additional funding for the Defense Department and additional flexibility. We have got to do this smart. If we're going to take these kind of hits at West Point, for goodness sake, give us the flexibility to do it in an intelligent way that minimizes the impact on folks who are working out there and serving our country and serving these kids who are going to be putting themselves on the line for us in the future.
It's completely insane.
It's nuts, and it is the dumb decisions of the last Congress that are still affecting us today, and we got to make better choices. You've heard me say this before. I was part of the Clinton team. We balanced the budget the right way. I believe we can balance the budget. I believe we can reduce our debt and our deficit. And I ran a business for 3 years and had to meet a payroll and know how important it is to make your numbers line up. But I will tell you this. There's a better way to do it, and we should not be going about it the way we are. And if a lot of people aren't feeling it, you know, that's fine. But I would not use that as evidence in some political food fight when real families in our area are being hurt, and it doesn't need to happen.
So just as before I say goodbye, do I sense it's a touch of optimism that more might happen on guns than a lot of us are led to believe by the last 90 plus days, that nothing's happened to this point? You think something might be on the horizon?
I don't know is the honest answer. I sure hope so. And I sure hope that it's done in a bipartisan way, working with gun owners and with people who respect the Second Amendment so that we can do what works and save lives. And I think that on the issues that matter most, background checks, trafficking laws, keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and people who are mentally ill, we ought to be able to do something, and I'm working every day to try to make progress there.
Oh, wish you the best of luck. Congressman, thank you so much. We're going to jump to a quick commercial break, everybody. We'll be right back.